Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with Eden. And Eden is getting very close to a very big release. At the time of filming, they've just released a brand new release candidate. So heading on over to Eden's website, and we can see here that version 0.0.4 release candidate 3 is the latest and greatest update. It is worth noting that this is a release candidate, so there may be bugs and issues with it before the final stable release. Anyways here, this one does have a number of fixes and brand new features. There's quite a bit in the changelog, and they do have a TLDR section, which I'm a big fan of. If you are interested and wanted to learn more about it, like everything we talk about, links are within the GitHub link in the bottom of the description below. I don't hide my sources. Taking a look here, they've got fixes for Pokemon ZA on AMD, fixes for Ender Magnolia on Android and other UE4 games, fixes for previous regressions on previous release candidates, initial firmware 21 support, and Windows on ARM support. And continuing to talk about Eden, and also talking about PlayStation 2 emulation on Android. Next up here, we're talking about Eden and ARMSX2. And it seems that Eden and ARMSX2 are a match made in heaven. I don't know if they're dating or what's going on here, but taking a look here at their announcements, they appear to be working together. So they say, our friends over at ARMSX2 have recently released for Android, and we'd love for you guys to check out their project. They also have a PS1 emulator in the works and are even making great strides, and I'm adding words here, and are making great strides in both projects. The two teams support each other greatly, and as Miyamoto constantly says, the time for the Eden collab has come. You can check out their project here. And then on the flip side, heading on over to the ARMSX2 Discord, and they've got this message posted. Good morning, everyone. I have more exciting news to share. In collaboration with the fantastic Nintendo Switch emulator Eden, we are happy to endorse and support them for what I'd like to call the Eden collab. Their project is making great strides for Android and other platforms, and we'd love for you to check them out. The teams support each other greatly as we pave a future for emulation. Now, I don't know about you, but I am really curious to see what happens moving forward with this Eden collab. I'm curious to see how both emulators benefit, and I'm very curious to see how they improve emulation. I'm not going to lie, I'm glad to see emulators working together, and I kind of wish more developers partnered up like this. We do see developers partner up from time to time and help each other out in the scene overall, but at the same time, I can't see any harm for this one. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. And speaking about collaborations, next up here, we're talking about something that I think a lot of people will be excited about, and that's the legendary One Fluff collaborating on this video, or maybe not, who knows. Probably more excited about RetroAchievements here now being available for Dolphin emulator on Android. This is the latest announcement from the RetroAchievements team up on the Reddit. So they say right here in their post, after extensive work, RetroAchievements is now supported in Dolphin for Android's development builds and is ready for the community to use. You can now earn achievements for GameCube games on your Android devices, with WiiWare on the way and landing in March of next year. However, there are some things to note. They say this feature is currently available in development builds only. Consider this an open beta. We've tested it internally, but with hundreds of players now available to stress test it, there will likely be issues we haven't discovered. And the achievement list for the game you're playing isn't visible yet. That's still work in progress and will be added in an upcoming emulator update. And maybe most importantly here, a stable release of Dolphin for Android with RetroAchievement support is planned at the end of the month. So that will be a very big release for Dolphin. Next up here, we're talking about Valve and the upcoming Steam machine and pricing again. And there's a very interesting podcast up on Skill Up that I would recommend checking out. It's titled, We Ask Valve the Big Questions Around the Steam Machine, Frame, and Controller. FPS Podcast 83. If you are interested and wanted to check it out, again, like everything we talk about, links will be within that GitHub link below. But look at the thumbnail here, and this is kind of telling. It's not going to be $400. And remember a couple of things. one, they had actual Valve people on this podcast. And number two, it doesn't appear that Valve has a price yet for the Steam machine. It seems they still are looking at things, but it's going to cost more like a PC and less like a console. And on top of that, I've got a couple more takeaways here. I do think it'll be tough for people to build a PC that's comparable with the Steam machine for the same price for whenever they price this thing. I think it is going to be priced extremely competitively, which I think is a really good thing. On top of that, they're saying it's going to be very quiet, which I am really looking forward to, especially in that small form factor. I mean, people trying to use this as an HTPC, where HTPC stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Home Theater PC, depending on how you wanted to interpret that. If it's quiet, I think that's going to really add to the value. I mean, I don't think people want fans just screaming really loud when you're using this thing and trying to, I don't know, play a game or watch a movie or just do stuff with. I'm really interested in the Steam machine overall. We are going to have to wait and see on this one, but I will say here that it's very interesting, and I'm betting that Valve is very aware of how important the pricing is on this. I mean, if you take a look at a lot of the chatter right now for the Steam machine, it's not about performance and what the thing can do. It's all about the pricing, and well, until we know more, we're not going to know more. We're going to have to keep speculating and guess as to what it's going to cost. I'm hoping that Valve nails a price down, they pay attention to the consumer base, and price this thing super competitively. I think if it is priced competitively, it's going to be very successful, and I just hit the microphone with my hand. And speaking about priced competitively and hardware, I mean, I just talked about me accidentally hitting the mic with my hand. Next up, we're talking about the KDE Slimbook VII. And this thing has just been unveiled. It features an AMD Ryzen AI 9 365, and I would argue based on the specs and the features of this, it is priced competitively. Now, for those who may not be aware, this is a Linux purpose-built laptop. Is it designed for gaming? Kind of. I mean, you can game on it, but I wouldn't say gaming is the focus of this. It doesn't have a discrete GPU. It's got an integrated GPU, and that is the AMD Radeon 880M, which is a part of the AI 9 365. You can put Windows on this thing if you want, but I would argue that based on the specs here, it does have 16 gigs of RAM to start. It is priced competitively. One of these is priced at €1,029 to start. Now, the screen size on this one is 16 inches. It's 2560 by 1600 at 165 hertz. And there is something I want to point out about the price. It does start at $1,029. However, that does factor in 21% taxes, which that's a whole lot, especially coming from a Canadian. Anyways, here you can significantly bump up the price too by just adding stuff like more RAM and storage. It does come by default with 16 gigs, two 8 gig sticks, but I mean, you can bump that up with two 64 gig sticks for €855. On top of that, the base storage here is 500 gigs, but you can bump it up to 1 terabyte for just €60 more, which I'd probably recommend doing at the very least. Or just throwing in a secondary NVMe and using that to dual boot into something like Windows if you even wanted to. Either way, I think this is a big win for KDE and Slimbook. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. And speaking about Linux stuff, next up here we're talking about Proton and Proton Experimental. Now, Proton Experimental is a more experimental version of Proton, hence the name here, and sometimes they get games working and fixes working before the official stable release of Proton. Anyways, Proton Experimental just got a brand new update here, and there are some really big things, including getting NASCAR 25 up and running on Steam on Linux. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know how many people watching this video will be excited about NASCAR 25, but for me, it's one of my guilty pleasures. I really enjoy racing games. Anyways, here taking a look, and I have been enjoying NASCAR 25. I'm really glad that it is now working on stuff like the Steam Deck, and we'll get to that in the next segment here because I've got some very interesting news regarding that. Anyways, here, they've also have some big fixes. Marvel Rivals is playable again, and Skull and Bones is playable again. So speaking about NASCAR 25 and the Steam Deck, next up here, we're talking about some very interesting observations I made between the Steam Deck and also the ASUS ROG Xbox Ally X. Now, I have NASCAR 25, and I have both devices. And I was curious just to see the performance difference between the two. I mean, I would argue NASCAR 25 is an unoptimized mess, and that's just my opinion. But at the same time here, I was very surprised with the results. and I've been getting a lot of very interesting feedback based on my results. Now, there are a couple of caveats here, so here are my results, and I want to say before we get into those, this was in practice mode. I chose practice mode because the frame rates were more stable. With 40 cars on the track and a lot of stuff going on and cars bumping into each other and spinning out and all of that, the frame rates were way more inconsistent between both devices and just in general. I got much smoother frame rates on both devices in practice mode, so that's where I compared them. During race mode here with 40 cars on the tracks for both devices, the frame rates did dip significantly. On the Steam Deck at 15 watts, I was still getting around 45 to 50 FPS overall, which is still pretty darn good. Anyways, and similar with the Xbox Ally X, the frame rates dipped. But taking a look, this is in practice mode. The Steam Deck at 10 watts, I was getting 56 FPS. The Steam Deck at 15 watts, I was getting 61 FPS. On the flip side, the Xbox Ally X, I was at 17 watts, I was getting 45 FPS. And at 35 watts, I was getting a whopping 71 FPS. My initial view here is the Steam Deck is far more efficient at lower wattages. Now, I just put out that tweet for the heck of it, and it did get quite a bit of attention, and I got a lot of angry messages from people with that Xbox Ally X. And that's not me crapping on the Ally X. I like it quite a bit. I use it as my frickin' everyday PC at home. On the road, I do use my Steam Deck because I find it more comfortable to play overall, and I don't mind losing the Steam Deck as opposed to the Ally X because the Steam Deck is a fraction of the price. And I love the Steam Deck. Don't get me wrong. I love the Ally X. Don't get me wrong there either. So I'm very unbiased when it comes between the two. I mean, if I had to choose one device, I may just choose the Steam Deck because I like it more. But at the same time here, the Ally X is a fantastic device on its own, and I really like it. I've done a review of it as my everyday PC and recommended it because I think it's a fantastic device. So I'm not crapping on the Ally X here. There's a couple of things to point out. So the Steam Deck here, I had running at 800p, and on the Ally X, I had running at 720p. So I had the Ally X running at a lower resolution. On top of that, the game settings between the two were the exact same. Now, I'm not going to say the game runs really well at high graphical settings on either device. I would argue the game doesn't look pretty overall on either device, just to having to lower them to have playable frame rates. That's just my opinion. But at the same time, I mean, I'm used to playing stuff like Half-Life 2 and all of that, so I don't mind lower graphical settings at all. And probably most of you watching this video play retro games where graphics are not necessarily the #1 priority. Anyways here, taking a look, I do have everything set to low. I've got things set as low as I can go pretty much, except the dynamic resolution. I could turn that down a little bit if I wanted to, but I don't. So my big takeaways on this one, and feel free to debate this if you want, but first and foremost, I think Windows has a whole lot of overhead and is not near as good as Linux is right now for gaming. That might be a hot take. I mean, you could talk about anti-cheats and all of that. I just think Linux in general is a better environment to have things run with way less overhead. Secondly here, I think that the Steam Deck, the chip they use in the Steam Deck is it's designed to run at a lower wattage, but I think it performs way better at a lower wattage than that Z2 Extreme chip. I mean, the Z2 Extreme running at 17 watts versus 35 watts, that's a huge frame difference between the two. And I mean, at 35 watts, that's over double the power of the Steam Deck, and you're getting a 10 FPS increase. Now, I'm very curious about other games, and I may go through even more just side by side and taking a look at them. And I mean, I'm not even factoring in stuff like frame gen and all of that stuff just yet. But at the same time here, I mean, just looking at these numbers with identical settings on both devices, well, actually the Steam Deck was at a higher resolution. It just goes to show, in my opinion, how good that Steam Deck is from a price to performance ratio, especially considering, yes, you can use it as an everyday PC, at least I do. Now, I could go on a tangent here, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet and land the plane, as Mrs. Sujano would say. Anyways here, the Steam Deck I use really more of a laptop. I bring this camping, I bring it traveling, I bring it around the house. It's just an extremely comfortable device to use while gaming, and also very versatile to be used as a laptop to edit videos, to film videos with, or whatever. Where the Xbox Ally X, I'm currently using this as my desktop PC. It's docked, it's got everything plugged in, and it's ready to go. I'm currently using this right now to film and edit this video. I do really like the Xbox Ally X. From a price to performance ratio and a lower wattage ratio, the Steam Deck I think is the clear winner. However, for the best performance possible, I still think the Xbox Ally X is in a really good place. I mean, this thing is a beast when it comes to overall performance, but at a higher wattage and also at a much higher cost. And the last thing I'll say here is that the Linux experience on both handhelds is fantastic. I mean, SteamOS on the Steam Deck and Bazzite on the Xbox Ally X. Whereas the Windows experience, I'm not a fan of Windows in general, or the Windows experience. I would say it's brutal on the Steam Deck and tolerable on the Xbox Ally X, and that's saying a lot from me. Realistically, if you're looking at this objectively, it's a good experience on the Xbox Ally X besides some Windows nuances, whereas the Steam Deck, I would still say it's not necessarily ideal. But speaking about experiences, next up we're talking about Earthbound for the SNES and a very interesting ROM hack called Endless Winters. And this turns the game from a gaming experience into just an experience. It's a very interesting ROM hack overall, and let me know your thoughts about this one. I mean, it basically just turns the game into an endless scroller, a nice screensaver per se, a nice cozy screensaver. So they say right up here on romhacking.net, inspired by lo-fi study beats and driven by a desire for a peaceful winter ambience. Endless Winters is a nostalgic hack of Earthbound that perpetually pans over a snowy landscape, designed to be loaded on a cartridge and played on original hardware. It functions as a simple installation piece that can be quickly installed using a Super Nintendo Entertainment System and a CRT. They go on to say the hack works by hijacking the game's introductory flyover sequence, by erasing introductory text, the editing game's map, and looping the flyover code indefinitely. Earthbound is rendered into something akin to a cozy screensaver. Endless Winters was created using an Earthbound ROM, Coil Snake, and EBME, which stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano. The hack represents 8 to 12 hours of work, including bug testing, and will likely not be updated barring the discovery of catastrophic errors. And last up here, we're talking about Resident Evil Survival Unit. Now, this is a brand new game on mobile devices, and it's been extremely successful so far. The game's been out for something like 3 days, and already on Android, it's got over 1 million downloads. It's also worth noting here the game has a 4.2 star rating, so it seems to be very well received. It's got over 42,000 reviews. Out of the gates, this thing has been incredibly successful, but it is free to play, and generally you know my stance on free to play games. Anyways, here there is a pretty good review, a pretty good write-up about it on Reddit Resident Evil that I would recommend checking out, and I will link in the GitHub link below. For full transparency, I haven't really played this one yet because it is free to play, and that's not normally my cup of tea. If you've played this one, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. The legendary One Fluff did make an appearance. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.